The Blind Watchmaker, Richard Dawkins. The Blind Watchmaker. Why the evidence of evolution reveals a universe without design. Chapter 3. Accumulating Small Change. We have seen that living things are too improbable and too beautifully designed to have come into existence by chance. How, then, did they come into existence? The answer is by gradual, step-by-step transformation from simple beginnings, from primordial entities sufficiently simple to have come into existence by chance, which successive change in the gradual evolutionary process was simple enough related to each predecessor to have arisen by chance. But the whole sequence of cumulative steps constitutes anything but a chance process, and you consider the complexity of the final end product relative to the original starting point. The cumulative process is directed by non-random survival. The purpose of this chapter is to demonstrate the power of this cumulative selection as a fundamentally non-random process. If you walk up and down a pebbly beach, you will notice that the pebbles are not arranged at random. The smaller pebbles typically tend to be found in segregated zones running along the length of the beach, the large one in different zones or strips. The pebbles have been sorted, arranged, selected. A tribe living near the shore might wonder at this evidence of sorting or arrangement in the world and might develop myths to account for it, perhaps attributing it to a great spirit in the sky with a tidy mind and a sense of order. We might give a superior smile at such a superstitious notion and explain that the arranging was really done by the blind force of physics. In this case, the action of waves. The waves have no purpose and no intention, no tidy mind and no mind at all. They just energetically threw the pebbles around, and big pebbles and small pebbles respond differently to this treatment, so they end up at different levels of the beach. A small amount of water has come out of this water, and no mind planned it. The wave and the pebbles together constitute a simple example of a system and automatically generate non-randomness. The world is full of such systems. The simplest example I can think of is a hole. Only object smaller than the hole can pass through it. This means that if you started a random collection of objects above the hole, and some force shakes and jostles them about and random, after a while the object above and below the hole will come to be non-random sorted. The space below the hole will tend to contain objects smaller than the hole, and the space above will tend to contain objects larger than the hole. Mankind had, of course, long exploited this simple principle for generating non-randomness in the useful device known as the sea. The solar system is a stable arrangement of planets, comets, and debris orbiting the sun, and each presumably one of many of such orbiting systems in the universe. The nearer a satellite is to its sun, the faster it has to travel if it is to counter the sun's gravity and remain in stable orbit. For any given orbit, there is only one speed at which a satellite can travel and remain in that orbit. If it were traveling at any other velocity, it would either move out into deep space or crash into the sun, or move into another orbit. And if we look at the planet of our solar system, lo and behold, every single one of them is traveling at exactly the right velocity to keep it in its stable orbit around the sun. A blessed miracle of provident design? No, just another natural thing. Obviously, all the planets that we see orbiting the sun must be traveling at exactly the right speed to keep them in their orbit, or we couldn't see them there because they wouldn't be there. But weakly, obviously, this is not evidence for conscious design. It's just another kind of thief. Thieving of this order of simplicity is not on its own enough to account for the massive account of non-random order that we see in living things. Nowhere near enough. Remember the analogy of the combination lock. The kind of non-randomness that can be generated by simple thieving is roughly equivalent to opening a combination lock with only one dial. It's easy to open it by steer lock. The kind of non-randomness that we see in living system, on the other hand, is equivalent to a gigantic combination lock with an almost uncountable number of dials. To generate a biological molecule like hemoglobin, the red pigment in blood, by simple sieving would be equivalent to taking all the amino acid building blocks of hemoglobin, jumbling them up at random, and hoping that the hemoglobin molecule would reconstitute itself by shear luck. The amount of luck that would be required for this feat is unthinkable and has been used as a telling mind blog by Isaac Asimov and others. A hemoglobin molecule consists of 4 chains of amino acids twisted together. Let us think about just one of these 4 chains. It contains of 146 amino acids. There are 20 different kinds of amino acids commonly found in living things. The number of possible ways of arranging 20 kinds of things in chains 146 rings long is an inconceivably large number, which Asimov called the hemoglobin number. It's easy to calculate, but impossible to evaluate, to visualize the answer. The first link in the 146 long chain could be any one of the 20 possible amino acids. The second link could also be any one of the 20, so the number of possible two-link chain is 20 times 20, or 400. The number of possible three-link chains is 20 times 20 times 20, or 8,000. The amount of possible 146 link chain is 20 times itself 146 times. This is a staggeringly large number. A million is 1 is 6 not after it. A billion, 1,000 billion, is 1 is 9 not after it. The number we think a hemoglobin number is near enough is 1 is 190 not after it. This is the chance against happening to hit upon hemoglobin by luck, and the hemoglobin molecule has omnia minute fraction of the complexity of a living body. Simple thieving on its own is obviously nowhere near capable of generating the amount of water in a living thing. Thieving is an essential ingredient in the generation of living water, but it's very far from being the whole story. Something else is needed. To explain the point, I shall need to make a distinction between single-step selection and cumulative selection. The simple thief you have been considering so far in this chapter are all examples of single-step selection. Living organization is the product of cumulative selection. The essential difference between single-step selection and cumulative selection is this. In single-step selection, the entities selected or sorted, fables or whatever they are sorted once and for all. In cumulative selection, on the other hand, they reproduce, or in some other way, the result of one thieving process are fed into a subsequent thieving, which is fed into, and so on. The entities are subjected to selection or sorting over many generations in succession. The end product of one generation of selection is the starting point for the next generation of selection, and so on for many generations. It's natural to borrow such words as reproduce and generation, which have association with living things, because living things are the main examples in all of things that participate in cumulative selection. They may, in practice, be the only things that do, but for the moment, I don't want to beg that question by saying so outright.